When we talk about grab and go, we often think of the grab and go emergency kit, which is very important. You want to have medicines, change of clothing, a bit of cash, food and water. So there's that sort of grab and go box. But then there's also the financial grab and go box. And that's where you keep copies of your most important documents that you could grab that and go if you needed to evacuate. And so it wouldn't necessarily be all of your financial records, but your most important ones that would be difficult to replace in the event that your house suffered water damage or wind blew things away, that kind of thing.
Having records organized and up to date, including health, insurance, and bank information, can not only help in our day-to-day life, but is especially important in the event of an emergency, such as a fire, flood, tornado, or prolonged power outage. September is National Preparedness Month, coordinated by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. In conjunction with that effort, K-State Research and Extension is providing weekly guidance throughout the month on its Facebook page to make us better prepared to handle disasters and to make recovery from difficult situations smoother and faster. On today's Sound Living, taking steps ahead of a disaster to get financially prepared. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. Beginning September 1st, Prepare Kansas 2017 will use weekly themes to offer tips for being financially prepared for disasters. K-State Research and Extension Family Resource Management Specialist Elizabeth Kish says that starts with compiling a household inventory of the things we own.
Right, because if something happens to your property, you need to be able to document what you have in order to either file an insurance claim or other claim.
What are the best ways then to document the things that you have?
Well, there are several ways to do it. Tried and true, paper and pencil. We recommend pictures, though. So nowadays, cell phones are great, especially if you have picture storage in the cloud. You can go and take a picture of the bigger items. Start with the bigger items because really it's the big stuff that's going to be expensive. Or so when I say big stuff, I mean expensive stuff, not necessarily taking up a lot of room in your living room. Start with the bigger things, the more expensive things, the things that are harder to replace. Antiques obviously are very difficult to replace, so you might want to document them for a monetary loss, but it might be harder to replace those.
And the pictures there would really help because then they can show the condition.
Right, the condition for any of those things, but also that way you don't necessarily have to write things down. But for the more expensive items, though, you probably also in a paper file or maybe you scan it and upload it again and save it to the cloud, document the cost and when it was purchased.
The idea here is to document everything that you have that's of value. And the problem we run into is that if something happens, we often overlook items or we forget things when we make our claim, and then we don't get as much money as we should.
Yes, you forget things. And you're not in a place. If you suffer a major disruption like a tornado to your home or a wildfire or an ice storm which causes your pipes to freeze, which then when it warms up causes them to burst, you're not in a place where you're really thinking systematically and able to visualize in the time frame maybe necessary. So that's another reason why you want to have it written down. It's for peace of mind. I think the other thing, we talk about always doing this household inventory, and one reason to have it is in case an emergency happens. There could be other reasons to have it. For example, if you're thinking about estate planning or passing on non-titled property to family members. So there are multiple reasons. Being prepared ahead of a disaster or a natural emergency is maybe the more pressing reason, the one that would affect you as you go on.
You mentioned that this can be rather time-consuming initially, but once you've done it, then it's just adding on as you buy new furniture or replace things or add to your collection.
Right. And also just start with one room at a time. And so, again, start with the big items in one room, the expensive items, go to the next room, and then take a sweep of sort of the secondary items and just kind of work your way through that way, too. And you might, we sort of alluded to insurance. So another part of being prepared, financially prepared ahead of disasters is to understand what your insurance policies cover and don't cover, and also what sort of documentation that policy requires in order to make a claim. And so that's another part of one of the activities that we're encouraging Kansans to engage in September for Prepare Kansas is to review your insurance coverage, talk to your insurance agent, to find out the details.
And you'll also want to make sure that you're fully covered in terms of replacement cost.
Right. The amount of your premium is related to the amount of your coverage, right? And what you will get out of it. So for most people, it's a balancing act. How much premium do I want to pay? But then I have to acknowledge that that's my coverage. And so you may have to make some hard decisions about what do I want to cover. And then if you have specialty items or collections, that might require a rider or another sort of insurance that would add on to your basic premium cost. So again, that's why you want to have this insurance review. I did an insurance review last year. I hadn't done it for a while, and learned some things about our property that gave me some things to consider. So we do say, this is something to do regularly. Every year would be nice, but certainly every few years at a minimum will be important because things do change.
Well, especially the value of your home could change.
The value of your home, the value of your property inside your home, yes, all of those things can change. And depending on the hazards that are encountered in a state, there may be some other changes too to the policies as well. I know I once had a house with an older roof, and so that there were some things about my policy that related to older roofs. And so, it's just the whole thing. And our property ages, so roofs get older. So then there may be different coverages based on the age of the roof or something like that. So you want to check that. And your car, too. I mean, we talk about houses a lot, but, I've had this happen. A tree fell on my husband's car, right? So we learned about our car insurance, or he learned about his car insurance at that point. So it's not only just the house, it's also the outbuildings that you want to review the coverage on, and also the contents of, you want to document that. It's your car insurance, if you have boats and those kind of things, other kinds of insurance.
Another thing you want people to concentrate on is making sure they have a grab-and-go box so that in the event of emergency, whether it's bad weather or a fire or whatever, they can grab that and get out of the house quickly.
Right. When we talk about grab-and-go, we often think of the grab-and-go emergency kit, which is very important. You want to have medicines, change of clothing. You want to have a bit of cash, possibly some food and water. So there's that sort of grab-and-go box. But then there's also the financial grab-and-go box. And that's where you keep copies of your most important documents that you would need, your insurance, so you can contact your insurance agent. You can contact your financial institutions. The terms of your insurance policies. You might have copies of titles to different property that you could grab that and go if you needed to evacuate. And so it wouldn't necessarily be all of your financial records, but your most important ones that would be difficult to replace in the event that your house suffered water damage or wind blew things away, that kind of thing.
Or if you get out of the house and you have no access to the internet, you need to physically have those things sometimes.
Right. That's exactly right, too. And so we get so dependent on the internet, and also just that's where, you might also keep some cash in your grab-and-go box. Although this is one of the things that I learned in my insurance review, is that if something happens to our home, only a certain amount of cash would be replaced. So you don't necessarily want to have a ton of cash. You want to have up to the limit of what your policy would replace if you were robbed or something else happened to it.
All those things we don't know that we only learn once something happens.
Interesting. Well, and we were not robbed, but this was just, it was a good review.
Well, then that's why we do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And things change. And so, so things that you might not be able to access on the internet if you didn't have access, or you didn't want to use your minutes or your power to dig them out. Things that would be expensive to replace or difficult to replace documentation, especially if those things would need to be replaced from somewhere in the same area that could also be experiencing some of the same things that you are. If you need to get a document from another state, then that's maybe a little bit different, because the likelihood that multiple states are experiencing the same thing at the same time is low, but can happen.
We also want to make sure that we have some sort of an arrangement set up for family communication.
Right. We're not home all the time. We spend a lot of time at work. Children are at school or daycare or wherever they go during the day. So, we often think about these storms that hit at dinner time or right before bed. And that certainly happens, but they also happen at other times of the day. And maybe family members are out of town too. So having a plan about communicating and how you will communicate with not only your immediate family members, but also letting family members who are further afield, who might hear of something that happened, how you can communicate with them so to ease their mind and to practice it. So if it's your family and we talk about practicing fire drills, we talk about practicing tornado drills, evacuating your house, everyone gets out and you have a meeting place. That's one type of sort of communication plan practice drill that you want to do. Another one is, okay, so everyone's at wherever they go during the day, something happens in the community, what will we do? And you have to understand, like if your children are at school, you have to understand the policies at the school, what they will allow, or how they will make sure that the children stay safe before they release them back into their parents' care, that kind of thing. They may alter the traffic patterns around the school. They may tell parents to go to a particular place distant from the school in order to pick up their children. So those kind of things I think parents need to be aware of.
And it's comforting for the kids to know what they're supposed to do, and really for adults, too. Everybody should know what they're supposed to do in an emergency.
And I think that's the bottom line. Yeah, it is, because we know what to do. I mean, those of us of a certain age, we spend a lot of time on tornado drills, fire drills at school. And now we know if the fire alarm goes off or the tornado alarm, we know what to do. And I notice living near campus, some of my younger neighbors don't necessarily know that. And so it does. It is comforting to know what to do.
Well, you mentioned fires and things like that, and that's another thing we want to make sure is that everything in our home that is supposed to alert us to an emergency is in working order. That's
right. So you do want to make sure that you have some sort of radio, weather radio, could be a crank or solar powered, or that you have emergency batteries. Power goes off, if you will have a power source. If you're going to depend on your phone, then make sure you definitely have external power sources that, you can plug into. And then if you need to go down in the basement or something like that, they say make sure you have something down there. If you don't have a TV down there, but a radio that you can listen to. Again, if you're going to use your phone, make sure, that's going to suck power. So make sure that you have a way to replace that power if the power goes out.
We want this to be an interactive experience, this being prepared.
Right. So being prepared can be a family activity. If you live alone, certainly you need to take steps. We need to do it at our offices, again, because we spend a lot of time at work. Over the years, Prepare Kansas has evolved a bit. It's now very much social media based. And so we will post regular information and information about the challenges, information about these 4 things that we talked about: preparing a household inventory, reviewing your insurance coverage, creating this grab-and-go financial box, and then developing and practicing a communication plan on the K-State Research and Extension Facebook page. Throughout the month of September, on Fridays, my colleague Jamie Rathbun will be hosting Facebook Live events around noontime, I believe, talking about each of these challenges and then giving some hints and ideas about how you can accomplish them. And we want to make this a community. We want social engagement. Share what you're doing. Help other people in your community be prepared and learn from one another.
Because communities do come together always following a disaster. Let's come together before these disasters happen and make sure that we're prepared.
Really good point. Yes. If you have older people as neighbors, they're probably not on social media, but, if you see them in getting the mail or the paper in the driveway, just talk to them. Like, have you thought about if there were to be something happen? Do you have this? Can I help you? What could we do to make sure that you are prepared as well?
There is also a fact sheet that people can take note of.
Right. So we have a fact sheet. It's called Get Financially Prepared, Take Steps Ahead of Disaster, that walks through these 4 things and gives some other concrete ideas and resources that people can look at.
Really goes into much more detail than we were able to do and has some links to where they might be able to find various forms.
Right.
The fact sheet is available at county and district extension offices and through the online K-State Research and Extension bookstore at bookstore.ksre.ksu.edu. The formal Prepare Kansas Facebook challenge runs through September only, but emergency preparedness information is available year-round on the Prepare Kansas blog at blogs.k-state.edu/preparekansas. Elizabeth Kish is a family resource management specialist with K-State Research and Extension. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.